I'm here to talk about creating value at the AI layer and kind of share how we think about this important topic. Because, AI product strategy is hard, right? It's a very dynamic space. The rules change all the time. You think you're building something that's really valuable, and then something changes at a layer below you, and suddenly you have to revisit all your assumptions. And so, we really think about this idea that like, hey, there's an AI layer. And you're probably familiar with the idea of, very commonly, there's an application layer, right? There's the UI and the UX of the product people use. And of course, there's the model layer, the LLMs deep down underneath that tend to power things. But really, there's a lot to do at the AI layer that we spend a lot of time on too. Prompts, orchestration, logic, context. And we really think it's interesting to sort of look at different products and kind of taxonomize them using this lens. And, back when ChatGPT first came out 2 years ago, there's a lot of talk about like thin wrappers. And really, the first ChatGPT experience itself was kind of a thin wrapper. I think now, another way of taxonomizing things or another set of products is sort of the AI-enabled application, right? And a good example of that might be, the early version of Copilot in VS Code, for example, right? Big application that people have been building for decades, but then with like a pretty thin AI integration and, with a very small AI layer above the model there. And I think, as time has passed, 2 years in, you're starting to see more and more things that are what maybe we might call an AI native application, right? And, Fin, our product today, would probably fall into this category. There's a very complex kind of RAG layer above the models that I'll talk about in a minute. And as AI kind of has matured, I think we're seeing more and more products that look a little bit like this. But first, I want to share a little bit about our context and our history, because it's kind of important for the direction we're going. So Intercom, we make a customer support platform, an inbox where, humans go and answer customer support questions. We started to build this product we called Resolution Bot, which was like, a previous generation, I guess, AI chatbot. Humans would have to go and like settle up and configure intents and then define like how it would answer a question. 2019, we're an early adopter of AI, and I went and did some splunking through our GitHub for this. And I think there's one thing I want to highlight here is, we were putting neural networks in production. We put Muse in production pretty soon after it came out, and we really ended up building sort of a proto vector DB with like cosine similarity and everything back then, to kind of power our previous generation bots. So we're kind of in this space, and we were well equipped when the world changed with ChatGPT, to start building Fin. So I'll quickly touch on the story of Fin. So we've kind of been watching this space for a while. We, internal memo I wrote about Google Lambda, and then suddenly ChatGPT came out, and we moved very fast on it. And we built Fin, which we considered sort of a breakthrough AI agent. We launched Fin on powered by GPT-4 on GPT-4 launch day. It was RAG from the start, and we had already started investing in RAG, I guess from maybe January 2023. And over time, through experimentation and gradual refinement, we ended up with an architecture that looked a little bit like this. This is kind of the Fin architecture from a few months ago. This is probably the chart that I am most proud of in my time at Intercom building Fin, which is the chart of Fin's resolution rate over time. And very weirdly, it kind of grows almost in a Moore's Law style way. Each month we're like, we've got a bunch of things we can try, and probably it won't work. Probably we're asymptoting out in terms of the quality, but each month we get about, on average, a percentage point of kind of end user defined resolution improvements. And it's working pretty well. We've got about $50 million of ARR at the moment just from Fin, and on a good trajectory if it holds to 100 million in a couple of quarters. So, Fin today, as I was saying, it really has a sort of a mature AI layer powering it, right? There's the models, but then there's a ton of stuff around the models. But how do we take that to the next level? One thing we spend a lot of time thinking about is this quote from Alan Kay, right? People who are serious about software should make their own hardware. It's quite an influential quote. And Apple, it's quite a cool quote. How does this apply to the AI era, right? And, we spend a lot of time thinking about this. And I think, as Des said earlier, we really have an emerging thesis that you've kind of got to go quite deep into the AI layer to build the best products. And so I'm going to talk about the results of our deep investment here. So one of the first things we set out to do is to build a custom re-ranker. I'm going to share a little bit about our journey doing that. So what's a re-ranker? Fin as a RAG application, goes and tries to answer a question using a whole bunch of chunked knowledge, typically from your help center or your other sources of documents. And we've discovered over time that the performance of an LLM in actually answering a question is super sensitive to the exact set of documents that we retrieve, and even, weirdly, the order in which we retrieve them and present them. And so building a re-ranker can be really impactful on the performance of the system overall. And so, we've ended up building our own custom re-ranker over the last 6 months using modern BERT as a building block and training it on a whole bunch of data from Fin. And I guess one thing we're sharing that is, somewhat surprised us is that for our use case, our own re-ranker here has outperformed the previous best-in-class re-ranker we were using, which is Cohere Re-rank 3.5, and improved answer quality, and it reduced our costs by a lot. We've also built a custom retrieval model over the last while. We call it Fin.CX Retriever. Again, this is initially trained on 300,000 real user queries, each of which had a hard resolution. A hard resolution is when someone affirmatively says, yes, thank you, Fin, this has positively answered my question. Our retriever model, which was a fine-tune of a Snowflake model that had a pretty good performance cost envelope, has performed very well, has outperformed the previous competitive retrieval models that we were using. We've also built a custom issue summary model that powers a part of Fin called Fin.CX Summary. I think this is a good example of the emerging hypothesis of the small LM hypothesis, essentially, that small language models can sometimes perform pretty well when trained for a specific task. NVIDIA wrote a paper about it recently that's been quite influential. Moving something, you don't do it lightly, but moving something from the LLM to a proprietary system that you control does enable you to get more fine-grained control and more fine-grained tuning of it. In our experience now, you can get really good performance by replacing LLM calls with more special purpose models. We still use Anthropic for our hardest LLM task of actually synthesizing an answer to a question from the RAG content. But all the other pieces of Fin, they all work together to add up to a good product experience. We've been able to improve our business metrics, improve our resolution rate, improve our margin substantially, and then also get much more fine-grained control in terms of the quality product, the quality trade-offs and metrics. Start out, build your product expensively, get the quality really great, stabilize the product, and then go and optimize it. And there's a lot of room for optimizing over time. And this is how we believe in trying to add sustainable value at the AI layer. And that's really what we're doing. And we're sharing a lot of this information for the first time today because in the past we've a habit of building really good technology and not talking about it much. And we're trying to change that and talk about it a lot.